Hey everybody, welcome to another Mystified Monday. Today I'm taking a look at Diablo II. Yes, it mystifies me. Namely, it mystifies me in the sense of it's basically exactly the same as the original Diablo, and yet people act like it's miles apart. In reality, this is basically just if you took the original Diablo, put a bunch of different locations in it, added a bunch of content, and said, okay, done. Obviously that was enough for a lot of people, but I look at this thing and go, okay, why would I play this over the original Diablo? Well, it has more content. Okay, so what? Just because it has more content and they added a few convenience features like tweaks to the UI and things like that doesn't necessarily make this a blockbuster experience. In fact, it's just like playing the original Diablo. All you do is go into dungeon, whack things in face, get loot, return to town, sell excess loot, equip better loot than what you have, repeat until endgame. There's still barely any story whatsoever, if any at all. I didn't play very long into this thing before I just got so bored I gave up on it, so for all I know the plot gets more advanced later on in the game. But of course the game does such a terrible job introducing you to whatever plot there actually is in this thing that it ends up not really mattering all that much. I mean, the game starts you out in the rogue camp and you have absolutely no idea what you're doing or why you're doing it. It's basically, you're an adventurer, go into this dungeon, which in this particular case is basically just a field that you walk into across a bridge. And you just start fighting things and killing all these demons that are just there for some reason. And eventually you get to the first boss of the game and you fight that and you defeat that and you're not really sure where to go from there, honestly. By that point, it has just descended entirely into the endless gameplay loop of go to dungeon, whack thing in face, get loot, equip better loot than what you have, return to town to sell excess loot, repeat until end game. I cannot for the life of me figure out why people find that fun. I mean, just look at this game. Is this supposed to be fun? Mowing down hordes of mobs with basically one or two swings followed by a boss fight or a slightly more powerful enemy that takes a few hits to go down but is otherwise really not that challenging? Is that supposed to be fun? Because it's not. It's incredibly boring. And while I certainly like getting rewarded for actually beating a particularly tough enemy or something like that with some rather good loot, in Diablo it's never really been all that impressive. You kill an enemy, they might drop a scarf or they might drop a sword, and then you have to identify that. If it's magical anyway. And if it's magical, more often than not, it's not going to be anything that's really particularly good. At least not until you get really late into the game, and by then it's mostly a numbers game anyway. I mean, it's always a numbers game, but by the end game, you're really just looking at the numbers and seeing if they add up to be better than what you had, or if they're worse than what you had. But here's the thing, unlike most people, apparently, because most people seem to absolutely love Diablo for some baffling reason, I am not really affected by loot drops very much. Don't get me wrong, if I clean out a dungeon and get to the end and there's not really any loot, I'm not going to be particularly happy about it. But when it comes to games like this, and this one in particular, and the gameplay loop is almost entirely centered around loot drops and not much else, it just becomes a complete turnoff. Why would I give a crap about this particular sword because it's magical when the one I had already is also magical and the only real difference between them is a slight difference in the particular particle effect that is getting applied to the thing or a particular status effect that is getting applied to it. Ooh, this sword does 5 poison damage while the other one did 3 cold damage. Oh, it's so much better. There's not much easier way to get me to not give a crap about the loot. But hey, Skinner box mechanics are pretty effective at keeping people playing it, so I guess more power to them for that or something of that nature. Once you get past the loot-based mechanics, the only thing that really remains is character progression, because like I said, the plot is so thin you couldn't possibly give a crap about it. And the character progression itself is, much like any other game in this particular genre, rather bland. You get a wide variety of passive abilities, but only a few active abilities, and those active abilities are generally locked behind various levels. So you might have one ability that unlocks at level 1, but then there's another ability that you have to unlock the previous ability for, and then you also have to reach, say, level 20 or something like that to actually be able to use that ability. Well, that's not really getting more powerful so much as it's the developers throwing the player a bone for having put up with the boredom of using basically one ability the entire game. But of course that's a problem that this particular genre in general has, and it's not really been fixed to date, so that can be kind of problematic. But while the core gameplay and the lack of plot are basically enough to keep me completely bored with it, I think what bothered me the most about it is just how incredibly samey it feels after having actually played the original Diablo. If you put the two games side by side and asked a layperson to identify which one is Diablo and which one's Diablo 2, they probably wouldn't be able to tell much of a difference. Sure, Diablo 2 is a bit better looking, but not very much, and it has more content, but that's pretty much it. It's still the same mindless, ridiculously repetitive gameplay that gets mind-numbingly boring within a few minutes, and yet it's expected that you're going to play this thing for 20 plus hours. I don't think so. I've already put in more than enough time in really the entire genre, not just in Diablo and Diablo 2, to try to figure out, first off, why I can't stand it to begin with, and second, if there's even anything that I actually like about the genre. And I really can't think of a single thing to name in the entire genre's favor, and when you get to Diablo 2 and the ridiculous amount of praise it gets, with people acting like it's a wildly different experience from the original Diablo, people constantly telling me, oh yeah, the original Diablo sucked, but Diablo 2 was amazing. To which I have to reply, no, it's not amazing. It's almost exactly the same game. And that is why I'm utterly mystified by it. I'm not going to bother with Diablo 3. I already know that I would probably despise it because I can't stand the entire genre. But I promised that I would give the second Diablo a shot. I would give it a fair shot at impressing me compared to the original Diablo, which is still the most boring game I've ever played. That doesn't mean it's a badly assembled game. It's certainly polished, it's well put together for what it is. It's just that that entire style of gameplay is mind-numbingly boring, and I cannot remotely comprehend why people enjoy it, let alone act like Diablo and Diablo 2 in particular are somehow these paragons of gaming that are unrivaled. It's just baffling to me. And of course that problem does extend to other Blizzard games as well. They are wildly overhyped. Even in the one genre they tend to produce games in that I actually like, which is real-time strategy games. I quite simply don't get it, and that's why I'm asking you guys, if you do like Diablo, and Diablo 2 in particular with regards to this video, please inform me of why you do, because I can't figure it out. And honestly, whenever I ask people why they even like Diablo 2 to begin with, they can never really give me a solid response. It's just kind of a, I don't know, I just like it. Well, I'm sorry, but that doesn't make it a good game. That just means you like it for some reason. And if you can't actually explain why you like it, that's not a good thing. But before I let you guys go to the comment section and explain to me why you actually like Diablo and Diablo 2 in particular, I want to make something very clear. People get the really wrong idea with these Mystified Mondays. This is not me saying the game is an atrocity or anything like that. This is me quite literally saying I have no idea why you people enjoy it. Because what I played was a well put together but mind-numbingly boring experience. Thus the video exists to create a discussion, not just throw you under the bus. People are way too quick to jump to conclusions with this sort of thing. Anyway, I look forward to your responses explaining to me why you actually like Diablo and Diablo 2. Thanks for watching.